And welcome everybody to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always, and I'm very excited for y'all to join us today because we've got a really great show, something that impacts so many families when it comes to PCS time and our fur babies. So we're going to talk with Kayla here in just a moment about navigating PCSing with your pets and everything you need to kind of know about that. Before we get into that, first, I just want to remind everybody that as you are setting up your move in DPS, you are putting, and when it comes to the date part of it, you're putting in your requested pickup date. You're putting in a requested pickup date and then a last available pickup date. Keep in mind that your requested pickup date, we have this 7-day spread thing happening. And so last year we saw that the requested pickup date was day 1 of that 7-day spread. It's kind of flopped this year. So this year, that requested pickup date is the last possible day of that spread date. So if you put in June 10th, just know 7 days prior to that, they can pick up anytime within that week. And then also keep in mind that, say, you put in June 10th as your requested, they pick June 5th as the actual pickup date. Keep in mind then your packing days will immediately precede that as well. So you need to have a little bit of some buffer room there in your schedule as you go planning your PCS. Just keep that in mind. We've seen a lot of questions asking about how this works this year, especially since they've done that flop. But the 7-day window spread still is in effect. It's just now it's your last day of the 7-day spread instead of your first day of that 7-day spread. So you got questions about that, drop them in the comments. We'll be happy to answer what we can. As we go through our show today, if you guys got any questions regarding your pets and PCSing, drop them in the comments. We'll ask Kayla if she happens to know the answer. If not, we'll find out who does know the answer and get you that answer, to make sure you're set up and good for your PCS. So diving into today, Kayla, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to be here. If you guys don't know, Kayla is part of the organization Leave No Paws Behind USA, who's been doing some phenomenal work behind the scenes, being able to help our families PCS with their pets and being able to keep those families together so families don't have to leave their pets behind or don't have to rehome them going from one location to another. So Kayla, welcome to the show. And you just take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. We're so honored to be able to be a part of this podcast and share our mission and information with all of our wonderful military community. My name is Kayla Nasiri. My husband is in the Marine Corps and has been in for 11 years. We've done several PCSs. Our most recent was overseas to Luxembourg, which is kind of where we first saw the real struggles of transporting pets overseas. Prior, we had always been California to North Carolina, back to California, and usually drove with our dogs, which wasn't ideal, but it was what we had to do. So when I got back from Luxembourg to Virginia, I was approached by our founder and CEO, Liz Hensel. She is a veteran. She is a military spouse. She has done overseas moves to Japan with her dog Prince. And that's kind of where we were born, was Liz preparing to move her dog Prince on a very last minute move to Japan. She was contacted by a lot of people, started getting a lot of stories about how difficult it was to get their animals to Japan back to the States. She because Prince was her therapy dog, he was able to be in cabin with her, and it was a little bit of an easier transition. But she was very shocked and inspired by all the stories that she had been hearing about people having to leave their animals behind with loved ones, rehome them all together, or pay thousands and thousands of dollars very last minute and still end up leaving them behind for a short period of time while they were able to get overseas and the quarantine periods. And it was just very overwhelming. And so she got inspired and was founded Leave No Paws Behind USA. And our overarching goal is to get an amendment or a bill into the national Defense Annual Appropriation Budget to include a pet transportation stipend of up to $4,500 to help out our families. We've seen all these issues across rank. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out as an E1 or you're at an E7, E8. These last minute thousands of dollar bills, PCSing is always so uncertain. You don't know where you're going, or you're told you're going one place and last minute you're going to another place. And so you have to adjust, and you have to always have a plan A all the way to a plan Z. And it's really hard when you have a set budget, and then all of a sudden it can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 plus to get your pets, which are your family members, to your final destination with you. So that is our goal that we're working on right now. And in the meantime, we provide smaller grants. We have our Nachos grant, which is $100 that goes towards veterinary fees associated with when you transport a pet overseas. They have to get extensive evaluations, brand new vaccines, sometimes titer testing vaccines, which can take weeks and over $100, depending on your host country. And so that goes towards just kind of alleviating some of those fees. And we also have our emergency grant, which can be up to $500, which we try to use for families who are in emergency curtailment due to health issues. We were able to help a family that had to leave the Ukraine and get their dogs from the Ukraine to Texas. That was really a great experience for Liz to be able to personally help them with not only, the financial aspects, but she physically picked up their dog from, I think it was Dulles, and she drove them with her husband to their final destination and back, and flew back, sorry. And so that's just kind of what we're working on. Our big picture is, getting stipends for our military families. Our current mission is to aid financially in any way that we can.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's one of those things that always amazes me is that just leave it to our MilSpouse community, to see the issue and figure out solutions for it and to help step in and fill those gaps and make things happen. So I love hearing that story about how Liz was able to help that family, not just be able to contract it out to other folks to, pick up the pieces, but she was actually there helping. And we talk some about this pet timeline with how we've seen some of these stories and these expenses pop up. We go back to the pandemic when the stop move orders, previously it was always, taking our pets with us, it's always an expense. It's on the families. Like you want a pet, it's your responsibility to get it there. But during the pandemic, we saw the stop move orders happen. The airlines reduced their pet spots that were available. In a way, pet shippers, I think, kind of saw this need and kind of took advantage of it with their pricing. And I also get, logistical things happened as well. But we saw those shipping prices increase a lot as well, which became an additional burden. I think that's kind of where everything was kind of born out of, was that need of, we no longer have these airline spots available. And now we have to use pet shippers because of COVID and everything that was going on. How do we fix this and make it better and easier for our families? And we saw the SPCA step in some to help with some grants. We saw you guys step in, and it took a little bit of time, but we eventually saw the various service relief organizations step in with various different grants or no interest loans to be able to help assist. And it's a common saying. I think we've all heard it a lot. Like, it took a pandemic for us to get the help we've been telling you we've been needing for years. It took a pandemic to get the world to realize we can remote work from home, right? Like, we don't have to be in the office. Military spouses have been telling you this for decades now. Like, it can happen, folks. So with all of this, what should families know about when it comes time to PCSing with their pets, especially when they have to go Oconus with their pets, right? It's not just going Kentucky to Texas where we find a pet-friendly hotel and we're good. There's
Right.
there's more that needs to go into that, right?
Right. A lot. So planning needs to start from the minute. I think if a CONUS is a possibility, even you should, and you know that you're up for PCS orders, you should kind of start looking into that stuff prior, just in case, those last minute orders come in, as they so tend to do. So the first step is really researching the laws of the country that you're going to is huge. I think a lot of people think it's just getting their pet on a plane and getting them there. There are very specific laws for every single country. There are quarantine laws, there are vaccine requirements, there are veterinary requirements. So usually you have to get you have to get a health certificate for your pet, which I think for international flight, I want to say it's the same as a state to state flight, but it has to be a VCA certified vet. You can't just go to your regular vet and get a certificate of health to fly like you would, I think, in state to state. It has to be a specific veterinarian, which is really difficult if you're at a base that's far away from one. I know when we were in California, because we were trying to get my dog from California to Luxembourg, the closest one was about an hour away from my mom because we couldn't bring her right away. So she went to my mom's. My mom was going to prepare her for the move. And it was over an hour away just to get that vet. So you have to research where that veterinarian is, make sure that the certification is within the correct time frame. And the vaccines, different countries have different vaccines. Some will even require titer testing, which I know that there's for sure a lab in Kentucky that does titer testing. So that's where we were going to have to send ours to. But there's only like one or two in the entire country that international moves approve for titer testing that shows the dog or cat's vaccine history to make sure that they've had everything. And that takes time, it takes money. So you have to make sure that you have all of the requirements met and then set up a timeline for those requirements and kind of provide buffer room for those things to happen, because what you might think should take 2 weeks might take 4 weeks to receive results for. So maybe just prepare. I think the second thing that's super, super important is to have every kind of plan. You can have one plan and then something will go wrong, and you have to be able to be very flexible with things. So say your plan to take your pet on your flight with you doesn't pan out. Do you have somebody who is willing to watch them until they can get them on a flight? If that doesn't happen, like for us, our dog was supposed to come with us when we moved overseas to Luxembourg. Like I said, my mom had her, was preparing to move her. And then COVID hit. And we got there in January. She was supposed to come in April because our house was ready then. And the EU completely shut everything down. Travel, pets, humans, didn't matter. Nobody was getting in or out, basically. And so we had to be without our dog for 18 months. And I had to have that conversation prior with my mom, not knowing that COVID was on the horizon, but just knowing the unpredictability of this lifestyle and just make her aware, and make sure she was fine with it, that Jubilee might be with you the whole time. And she was okay with it, thank goodness. She was amazing. She loved both of our dogs endlessly until we got home. So just that, like, you have to think about every possible scenario and have a plan for every possible scenario. Because I think a lot of times we get these heartbreaking stories of I'm overseas but we're getting medically curtailed because a family member has an emergency medical situation and now their dog is stuck in the country because they can't get a flight. So always having a plan in place, written down options for where your pet can stay, where they're going to go, how you're going to get them to where you are is the biggest obstacle, and just remaining very flexible with your options and comprehensive with your options too, weighing all of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of those things we always try to plan for, the best possible scenario and also those worst possible scenarios, and hope, it's the better option that happens. But we've seen how COVID has thrown a wrench in a lot of things. And I'm glad to hear your mom was able to help you guys out and be able to care for them, because not every family has that option, has that ability. And sometimes our pets are in a boarding facility thinking they're going to get picked up on Tuesday by the pet shipper, and then things are going to be good, and then suddenly something happens, and now your dog, your cat, whatever animal it is staying longer in that boarding facility, and just the added expenses of it can definitely go a long ways to making it more difficult on a family. I'm going to drop a couple of links into the comments. I'm going to drop the link to the State Department for their page for the international travel for pets, where you can be able to go and find your country, their requirements for your country. So you know what kind of vaccines you need, what their requirements are. Because I think that's always, from what I've seen at least, where everyone always starts is like, I don't know what my country requires. Like, I don't know. And it's always just like, we're moving here. Like, how do I get my dog there? And I always like to tell people, like, you are probably not the first person to ship your dog to whatever country it is, but sometimes it feels like it on our end. It's just like, I feel like I'm the first person. Nobody knows what I'm supposed to do.
Well, I think a huge issue is the continuity of information isn't there. It's ever changing. So even if you have someone that says, hey, I know this person who went to this country 5 to 10 years ago with their pets, talk to them. What they may have gone through, they might be able to provide some good information, but it also might not be relevant to present day anymore because of how much things are changing,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm also going to drop the link for y'all's website too, to leave No Paws Behind USA. So that way everybody can be able to go reference what you guys are doing, get help if needed, and be able to, watch everything that you guys are doing. I will tell you one of the things as I was looking, because whenever we come up on order season, it's always one of those things like, are we going Oconus? I keep trying to get our family to go Oconus. We have not been the lucky recipients of those orders yet. We have received surprise orders. So we've had those random PCSs, but I always try to get us to go Oconus. And like every time I start looking at how do we get our pets there, because we have 2 cats now. At one point, we also had a dog as well. And so it's always just like, we could do this, or like, what family could we leave a pet with until we came back, or if we needed to, or whatever kind of deal. And so one of the things I think that surprised me the most, just because I haven't had to go through this process, is like, you don't necessarily take your dog in the crate with you to the airport. Like, there's sometimes like cargo terminals you have to drive to and drop your pet off there. And then you have to go to the actual terminal to like go check in and take all your bags. In my head, I was like, it's all one space. Like, here I am going to be with our lab and his crate, and he's going to go like with our suitcase on the conveyor belt. Right. It's totally not like that, folks. So don't be like a Megan. Don't think that's don't just show up and think like American Airlines will handle everything for you at the ticket counter.
Right.
It's totally not the case at all.
Yeah.
So with this, so we know many families PCS every year with their pets. What have been, over the last couple of years, some of the issues that you guys have seen for families that they're running into in trying to get their pets to their next location?
Definitely flight availability is a huge issue. Like you said, that I feel like a lot of people go under the assumption that they can just bring their pet and do it and bring them in their crate and everything will be okay. A lot of flights have a pet limit, and most of the time you have to book your flight before you can even book your pet. So they won't even tell you if there's availability. They might be like a pet friendly flight and say, yes, we do allow them in the cargo or in the cabin, but they do have a limit, and that limit isn't always updated. And so oftentimes you have to book a flight hoping that you can also book a ticket on the same flight for your pet, just to call and find out that they're full or that flight isn't allowing pets for whatever reason. I think also a good thing to remember is that our PCS seasons fall in inclement weather times. Most flights, for good safety reasons, put an embargo on pets being allowed in the cargo hold, because it's way too hot or way too cold and they're not climate and temperature controlled, and that can result in your dog getting or your cat getting very ill or possibly dying. So that's a huge issue. I think a lot of people don't realize is when we are at peak PCS season is when the access to flights for our pets also drops drastically. And I would say, let me see, like big issues are crates, dog sizes. You might have a dog that's a big, beautiful dog, and there's not an airline that allows crates that big. And so you run into issues of, well, then how do you get them? Do you have to wait for, I think Delta is Delta Cargo is one of the companies that I found has the largest crate capacity. I wish I had the number. But we had a request a while ago for probably one of the biggest crates you can get, and they were the only ones, and they barely fit. And so, being able to access that when you need it is a big issue for families.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where I'm here, like, I want the biggest dog possible. I want the dog that like walk me. You see them like all the time on like the TikTok videos where they're just like these huge dogs. I'm like, that's the type of dog I want. And then my husband reminds me, like, we're a military family and we move a lot, and finding a house that allows us to have the few small pets that we have now is hard. Like, we're probably going to have to buy a house everywhere if we get, that giant dog. But no, I mean, those are some of the concerns that we do see a lot of families, just the size of the dog in the crate, and then the pet spots. I think a lot of folks don't realize the limited pet spots, or you can only fly your pets like between certain temperatures just because it gets too hot or too cold for them, and not realizing that until it's time to go through your PCS. And set everything up. And then, what do you do then? And having that backup plan of, pet shippers or having a friend take them, or whatever it could be. So with some of these issues is also the financial burden that goes along with getting our pets there. So what are some of the resources out there that families can turn to help with that financial burden some?
So right now, we have limited funds, but we're constantly fundraising, applying for grants and all that. And so we try to help as much as we can. We have a really big waiting list, but something that did come up, I think as a result of COVID, maybe prior, was that the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society did open up their emergency loans for pet transportation costs. And so they do allow that. I cannot remember the cap on it. I apologize, but it is something that will help. And really, we haven't really seen a lot of organizations. There are several out there that they, like the Dogs on Deployment, that will help find care for animals while the deployed spouse is on deployment. But there aren't a lot of other resources that we've found that I can think of out there, aside from maybe crowdfunding, GoFundMe to help get you there. People have had to take out personal loans just to get their dogs there, dip into their savings to get their dogs there. So that's why getting the the bill passed for this is such a huge, huge issue, because the financial burden really rests on the shoulders of the families, and it's huge. And every person that we've talked to, that we've met, always is like shocked at the price tag of transporting a pet, thinking that they should just go with the rest of the stuff and with the family, but it's just not that easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is something I think a lot of people don't realize too. Again, until you get those orders for an Oconus location and you start trying to figure it out, that you figure, your pet can go in cabin with you. And we saw the airlines change some of that before, like the emotional support animals, that it seemed like everybody, if they were PCSing, suddenly had an emotional support animal. And then I think the airlines were just like, no, only like service animals, service dogs are allowed, not all the emotional support animals. Which I always love the memes, like, this is my emotional support alligator. Which
chicken.
I mean, that would be me. This is my emotional support llama. Like, why can't it sit in the seat next with me? But just seeing how over the last few years, how those things have changed, and now families having to foot that bill and figure out that process. So I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but I really want to go back to it because I love what you guys are doing so much with your organization, with Leave No Paws Behind USA's mission. You guys are pushing some congressional changes to the financial regulations to, what's in the JTR for families when it comes to pet. Because right now it's only $500 for quarantine. Expenses is what you can be reimbursed from the military, but you guys are pushing for more than that and to cover more than that. So if you can just go into some more detail about that amount, what it's supposed to be meant for, and that process you're going through to try to push that change.
Right. And I think that when talking with Liz last week, that $500, I think, is only for specific countries too. Like, it doesn't qualify for every single country that you might PCS to that has a quarantine. And so the $4,500, it initially, I want to say, was closer to $2,500 or $3,000, but the people we were working with felt that we needed to bolster that number, because when you lay out how much it costs each way, they felt we deserved more, which I appreciate, and they were going to push for more, which we greatly appreciate. And so it's really, I think, the number was come up as kind of like a max asking offer, even though we started lower, but it's because those costs just, they snowball, they surmount. You think, okay, I've got to get a crate, which can be anywhere from $50 to $150, depending on the size, the quality, the requirements of the airline. You have to get that VCA international travel certificate, which that appointment is pretty expensive. I think it was going to be, for us, when we were looking to move our dog, $80 to $100 just for that examination. The titer testing was over $100. Vaccines, depending on which ones you need. And so all these little things that start adding up just for you to possibly get your dog by yourself. Like, if you're lucky enough to get a flight where your dog or your cat can go in the cargo, that all adds up to hundreds of dollars, close to $1,000. And then you think about the country you're going to, where they potentially have to quarantine, and then so you have to board them, and how much is that per day? Usually 30 to 60 day requirements for the quarantine, and then additional testing over there. And then now, because of all the restrictions, a lot of people, like you said, are having to turn to pet carriers, and that's where that's a huge, huge price increase. Just for us to try to get our dog one way from California to Luxembourg was going to be, I think, $4,600. And with all encompassing with her veterinary, her crate, and everything, $4,600 just one way. And so I think they're trying to come up with a average price for worst case scenario situations where you have to use those expensive pet carriers. to really help prevent our military families from going into debt, from having to use their emergency savings on this, which from experience, from the stories we've heard, from my own personal experience, it's well worth it. And we would do it in a heartbeat just to get them there. But it does put a big stress on the families. And so it's kind of a middle ground number. Like I said, we've seen, we just had a family who had to curtail, I believe from Japan, on medical issues. They had 2 members of their family have emergency medical issues, and they had to take their pets back. They had a cat, a dog, and a bunny, and I think a hamster. And the bunny and hamster were $1,500 each. And then total, I want to say it was just over $11,000 one way to get them back.
So, and I think like a hamster and a bunny, like, let me just put them in my carry-on with me. Like they should be, you know, but it's not knowing those expenses. I think that get a lot of people, especially now when we see inflation, the cost of gas that go up, and now we have to drive 4 hours to drop our car off as well, get a rental car to drive back. That just all of those expenses that are previously or currently not reimbursable. And I know I say it a lot. We have our DLA. Our DLA is to help pay for some of that, but DLA can only go so far when you start adding everything together.
So it's just a huge issue. And even the company they were using was a well-known, reputable company, and their price, just from the time they were quoted to when we sent them the emergency grant, that had jumped exponentially just for inflation, you know, and resource access, and so it just seems like it's going to keep going up from here. And so the $4,500 is a way to alleviate that stress, and in all reality, help get members of our family with us, you know, because I say it all the time, I'd rather have my dog than my workout equipment. You know, it's going to cost the same to ship them, but they won't ship my dog.
Right.
But they will ship out, you know, everything in my garage. So
yeah, no, absolutely. They definitely are members of our family. And everything. I think about the times that our pets, when my husband was deployed for all his multiple back-to-back deployments, how, you know, it was either my cat coming to cuddle with me every night after I got the kids to bed, or thankful for our family dog, you know, who was really like a guard dog, who made sure, like, you know, there was a weird noise outside and he was like at the window, like barking at the window to see what's going on. You know, but they are family members, and they do need to be kept with us, you know, regardless of where it is we move. I mean, and it's one of those things, you know, that we always hear the military, that cliche thing of like, well, if the Army wanted you to have whatever, it would have issued it to you and whatnot. And it's just like, that's great for like the 1950s, but welcome, you know, to modern day. And it's just like, you know, you do pay for all of this stuff, you know, which we're always so thankful for, but our pets are a part of our family. Let's get a little bit something for them as well.
Right. Well, and we're working on a series that's going to be coming out soon, I believe, on our TikTok and social media, that is focusing on the mental health aspects of the military family and the benefits of having a pet. You know, there's study upon study that shows the mental wellness benefits that having an animal companion does for you, especially service members, families, kids. They're such a huge integral part. And when you have a spouse that's leaving constantly or going on a company, that whether, you know, they're out at training all the time or back-to-back deployments, those pets are a constant and just always there for you and always there to snuggle and help you feel better. And, you know, if you look at it, like I said, from a scientific view, they have a huge impact on our mental wellness. And so we're coming out with a series that focuses on that to try and show like why we're doing what we're doing and why it's so important to keep our family wholly intact. You know, humans, pets, all together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't wait to see that. We'll definitely get that shared in our pages as well, because they do help. I think, absolutely with the mental health. I just think about, as you were talking about that, thing about my kids and how many times like they have fought over whose room the new kitten was going to be sleeping in, or who was going to be sitting in the chair next to our dog during our PCS, and who was riding in what car with what animal, because they all wanted a piece of them and wanted to comfort them in the car. But I think it was just so they also have something to do in the car as well. So absolutely. I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see everything that you guys have coming up. When stuff starts going through Congress, starts getting pushed out, we want to know about that so we can get it pushed down to everybody, and get that support of our community behind that. So thank you, Kayla, for joining us today and sharing with us so much about what families need to know with our pets and about Leave No Paws Behind USA. And so again, just thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on here. It's such great work you're doing for all of the spouses out here, because I swear to you, every PCS is different. They're never the same. And so you think that you'd be a pro, like just doing one, but you're really not. And so having like all the resources and consolidated and constant help is amazing. So thank you for what you do as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And everybody watching, thank you for joining us today. We're glad that you're here with us as well. Join us again here next week, same time. Actually, next week we'll be back on Wednesday. Actually, a couple hours later in the afternoon, we're going to have moving industry members on with us talking about what you should expect this upcoming peak season. It's going to be a lot of last year. But come join us, hear all the details about it, and we will see you all then. Until then, have a great rest of your Tuesday. It's Tuesday, not Wednesday. Have a great rest of your Tuesday and a great rest of your week, and we'll see you then.